Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the SIA Inside Line podcast. My name is Kristin Carpenter of Verity Brand Communications, and I'm here with Nick Sargent, the president of Snow Sports Industries of America.
Thanks, Kristin. Good to be here.
We have such a big show today, don't we, Nick?
We do. There's a lot to talk about, and it's very timely, too.
Yeah, we're bringing kind of one of our first, and we didn't walk slowly here. We're kind of cannonballing into the deep end. We're looking ahead. We're looking at change makers, and we literally couldn't find a more perfect personification of that than our guest today. So, Nick, I'm going to have you do the honors of introducing our guest today. But yeah, super excited about the conversation ahead.
Awesome. Well, we're really lucky to have Augustus Doricko, CEO of Rainmaker Corporation, with us. He and I have spoken a few times, and I find his work just absolutely intriguing. And truth be known, I literally just walked off the ski hill and skiing on man-made, a single run man-made. And I was racing to my room to get here to do this podcast. So I have a boatload of questions. And, we are in kind of a snow deficit position here in the West at the moment. And so with that, I really wanted to get into it with this conversation and welcome Augustus to Inside Line. And Augustus, I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about yourself and the mission of Rainmaker.
Yeah, happily. Nick, Kristin, again, thank you so much for having me. Sorry that it was only a single man-made run you were on instead of man-made powder from clouds across the entire mountain, but we'll work on that out along the front ridge. So awesome. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder of Rainmaker, and we're a next generation cloud seeding and weather modification company. And so what that means is that we make more rain and more snow for different folks that need it, whether that's ski resorts that need more snow, residential utilities, hydroelectric reservoirs, or for environmental restoration like the Great Salt Lake. And we'll probably talk about our Great Salt Lake project in a little bit. But at the very highest level, we do something called cloud seeding, which means we identify with a bunch of fancy sensors clouds that have liquid water that is not naturally precipitating. And we'll fly drones into those clouds that release a material that freezes the small liquid drops into big enough snowflakes so that they fall. That's what we're doing across 6 states in the American West and also a little bit of the Middle East now too.
Wow. It's amazing. I mean, there's clouds here today and I'm looking around as I'm putting sunscreen on, hiding myself from the sun. But, I'm so intrigued, with the number of people that are at resorts currently looking around. I really don't think they're thinking about cloud seeding. And I know cloud seeding has been around for a long time. Maybe give us a little history of cloud seeding just for the general audience.
Totally. So believe it or not, cloud seeding has existed for almost 80 years now. In 1946, General Electric patented the first cloud seeding method by flying an airplane up above some non-precipitating clouds in Western New York, throwing dry ice out of the back of the plane, and freezing the super cold liquid drops into snowflakes that precipitated out. And so what we realized back then was that we could, with some precision, modify the weather, make it snow more for the sake of, human and environmental and agricultural benefit. But the reason why we're having this conversation now and cloud seeding isn't everywhere already is because of this thing called the attribution problem. Meaning, if I fly a plane or a drone, or if I shoot rockets into a cloud and then it snows, who's to say that I actually made that snow, right? Who's to differentiate between whether it would have snowed naturally or if it's entirely man-made or if it's some mixed proportion of each? Historically, people wouldn't pay for cloud seeding because they weren't able to rigorously measure their effect, right? If I seed on one mountain and not the other, and it snows more on the mountain that I seeded, maybe it was going to vary that much naturally anyway. So cloud seeding, it wasn't really deployable at scale. It wasn't justifiable as an expense for either ski resorts or governments up until just recently. In 2017, this group called the National Center of Atmospheric Research, they're one of the best national labs in the US. They realized that if you have the right kind of radar and you can differentiate between liquid and ice in clouds, this is pretty cutting edge tech, but if you can differentiate between liquid and ice in cloud, and you can find a cloud that's entirely liquid, and then you fly in a specific pattern, like in a zigzag or a straight line or a circle. Theoretically, someday I'd like to like carve initials into clouds for people, but for now, if you fly in a zigzag and you're seeding, and only in your flight track do you see that liquid turn into ice, and then that ice precipitate as snow, then you can say that it's definitively man-made. You can say how much water got on the ground, how many millimeters or centimeters of snow landed because of your intervention. And when they proved that out in 2017, and then the Chinese proved it in 2021, and then the Swiss lab did it in 2023, people started to realize, or at least I did, and a handful of engineers and scientists at Rainmaker realized, if you can measure your effect, you can actually deploy this and tell people transparently what the value prop is and make more snow and rain for people in need. And so that's what we're doing now.
But we're not talking like major dumpage. We're talking, I was really surprised when you and I last spoke, and you were kind of giving me the numbers around, how much precipitation you were generating. And I was thinking, man, if I got into business with you and I could dictate when it was going to dump and where, I think we could make a lot of money, right?
I think you'd be pretty popular in your role.
Yeah. So the counterintuitive thing is, if we say we're making millimeters or like low single digit centimeters of snow in a given operation, that isn't enough to, in a single event, bring a mountain online and bring the ski season earlier, like as of that day.
Yeah.
But over the course of a season in the Rockies, if you have 100 opportunities to make it snow a little bit more between October and April, that becomes a super material amount of snow over the course of the season, even if it's only a little bit each time. And so, yeah, when people say, are you going to do what happened in Dubai and flood the whole city or something, like, cloud seeding actually just isn't that powerful a technology yet, even if it is consequential over the course of a year.
Right. I think that's probably the most pressing thing to let the viewers know, that we're not talking big dumps, but over the course of time, that moisture can certainly add up and add to a much richer winter, and then when it melts, more water in the valleys. Yeah,
exactly. And I think there's also something sort of intuitive here in that, like, if you have a cloud that's already bringing down a ton of snow, it's a relatively efficient system, right? Like that, if there is a ton of water in the cloud, if it's really, really saturated and it is cold, it's going to snow naturally fairly efficiently. The clouds that are most optimal for seeding are the ones that aren't naturally precipitating, because there's not quite enough liquid water for the droplets and the snowflakes to become big enough on their own. And so what we do actually is, like, how cloud seeding works is we mimic the natural snow formation process, where a lot of clouds that naturally precipitate, they already have natural dust in them that the water droplets freeze onto. And we just happen to use a material that is the most effective for getting water droplets to freeze onto it, silver iodide.
Silver iodide. Yep.
Yeah.
That's cool. Man, I don't know. I mean, I have so many questions, Kristin.
Well, I think it's important for our audience to understand a little bit about your background, because I feel like you're a very brave entrepreneur. You're obviously very driven, and you're of the age group that's going to have to deal with a lot of the problems that are happening right now. So I would love to just have you talk a little bit about, like, maybe a little bit about your education. You can talk about the formal one, but maybe more with your entrepreneurship, and then kind of how you got into this. We're a community of specialty everything, so we get emotionally connected to these stories.
Totally. And I'll tell you, it was a very circuitous and serendipitous path that led me to Rainmaker. My background originally, I grew up in Connecticut, and it's funny talking about water and drought and snow pack now, because in New England, like, there is no want for water ever, right? And so when I moved out to Berkeley for my undergrad, where I was studying physics to UC Berkeley, and I was in California, and people started talking about droughts and the Central Valley drying up and Tahoe not opening on time. I was like, what are you guys talking about? Chemo is open same time every year. Like, there's always snow in New England. Some years better, some years worse. But I was really struck when I moved from New England to California for my undergrad, that water was as big an issue as it was in the Western US. So I was studying physics. Then I moved to Texas during the pandemic just because my grandma was there. and I became a personal trainer, just because I wanted to meet people. Again, not clear how this maps to cloud seeding eventually, but I promise it does. And so while I was a personal trainer, I met one of the biggest water well drillers in Texas. So the guy that was responsible for drilling wells for farmers, for HOAs, for corporate campuses. And he was extremely generous, took me under his wing. And we ended up co-founding a business together that automated the regulatory compliance for groundwater users. So if you're a farmer and you're pumping water, because of how drawn down the aquifers are now, the states are starting to dictate how much you're allowed to pump. So we were like TurboTax for groundwater, started building that business up, and dropped out of college my senior year to focus on that full time. So we scaled that business in Texas, some of the Midwest. I moved to California to grow it there, and ultimately sold my interest in the business back at the beginning of 2023. And at that point, every single one of our customers was saying the same thing. Augustus, it's great that we know how much water we're using now, but really at the end of the day, we just need more, right? We just need more water. You're a tech guy. Can you figure out how to make more? And I was like, I don't have the slightest clue how to help you, but I'll look into it. And so first I thought I would start a desalination company. But the problem with desal is if you're in Utah or Idaho or Colorado or even Arizona and New Mexico and you don't have a coastline, then you can't do desalination. So you can't make more water that way. So I kept looking, and some farmers told me about cloud seeding. And first pass impression of cloud seeding was, and I was a big sci-fi dork and read a lot of sci-fi books growing up. I was like, oh, weather modification, terraforming, that's super frontier. Of course we should be doing this. That's so exciting. And you could make more water from clouds that otherwise would just pass over Beaver Creek. But then my second reaction was, oh, well, the tech clearly has so much potential, but it's been around for 80 years. If it's been around for so long and it's not everywhere already, then it must just not work, right? The physics must not add up. There's got to be some explanation as to why it doesn't make sense. And then I didn't think it was viable until I met the professors from the National Center of Atmospheric Research, and they told me about their super, super groundbreaking campaign where they realized in Idaho that if you have the right radar, you can actually measure your effect, and that was the fundamental problem in the past. And so that was back in March or April 2023. We started the company in April 2023. And what we pieced together was, if we build the right kind of radar so we can fill in the gaps between where the National Weather Service doesn't have coverage, and we can target these clouds effectively, if we can measure what our yields are with that same radar, and then we use drones to lower the cost of operation relative to planes, then this tech can become one of the most instrumental, and by no means like the singular solution to water scarcity in the American West. I think we should do a lot of other kinds of conservation, but it can be one of the most instrumental ways to produce water for the drought-stricken Rockies, Sierra Nevada range, and the rest of places that need more snow.
And you were off to the races.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, not so much. Actually, between when I started the company in December 2024, none of it was working. None of this worked at all. It was a lot of beating our head against the wall because, first of all, I thought I'd be able to buy drones from existing vendors. It turns out, though, if you're flying into clouds that are really cold and full of liquid water, that liquid freezes onto your drone and ices it up, and then you can crash. And so we had to design our own drone. It's the only one in all of NATO that can fly in severe icing conditions. And so we basically designed and installed these heaters in the carbon fiber of the propellers of the drone to melt the ice off as it's flying to keep it up there. So that was a huge problem that we had to solve. And then also targeting is really complicated too. Not just any cloud can be made to snow more. You have to find the specific pockets of it that have more supercooled liquid. And we were not good at that until at the end of 2024. And still, we have a lot of R&D to do to optimize our cloud seeding right now. But in 2024, we were able to measure our effect
But the trial and error that you had to go through from when you started in 23 until 24 must have been just, you're learning on every spin of the blade, basically.
Yeah, big time. And, I'll say the great irony of it is, right, like, it's already as hard as it is to forecast the weather, let alone try to engineer and modify it. So it definitely took a lot of elbow grease, but I am extraordinarily grateful to have the team that I do around me. Some of the best engineers in the US, some of the best scientists in the US, people with postdocs in super boutique fields like, radar meteorology or aerosol cloud interaction. It was a grind, and it's going to continue to be one because we have to produce a lot more snow for all of these places. But and we can do some of that now, but the better we get, the better off all of these different industries are going to be. And so I'm super excited about all of the work that is going to come in the next year, 5 years, decade. I'm excited to die in the saddle at this company just because I love the work that I get to do.
That's amazing. And I also just have to say, like, as you're also looking at product market fit with your product, you're also dealing with a stakeholder group that I'm not sure anybody has had to deal with on the level you have. I mean, it's just as a person with a communications, that's what I do. I can't even imagine like what you're navigating in terms of like government, private sector, religious. Like, we don't need to get into the weeds, of course, but I also just want to point out to everybody, you're not just pioneering a product. You're pioneering like a runway toward a technology that literally there's no map for it. And everything historically seems to have an opinion tied to it. But I will tell you, with our group here within Winter Outdoor, we're pretty freaking excited that you're doing what you're doing. And I'd love to have Nick kind of ask you a few questions that pertain specifically to Winter Outdoor.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many changes that we're seeing in Winter Outdoor. Certainly, lack of moisture. In the high density snowpack areas like Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming. Oddly, we're seeing New England's having a banner start to the winter with a lot of moisture. They've been dry the last few years. So as this industry tries to navigate forecasts and then make financial plans for their future, certainly snow is the base of that. And knowing that you're out here trying to create more moisture for us, for farmers, for states, for whatever, is really cool. But how do you see contributing back to winter sports, snow, and I know you're working with a number of different states in winter sport areas, but how do you feel your contribution is really going to continue to at least give us a sense of reliable snow when we're accustomed to using it?
Yeah, you brought something up that's really key, right? And it's a question of moisture and moisture availability. Part of the catch-22 of cloud seeding is you actually do need a cloud to be there in the first place. And so wetness begets wetness. But then there's another question of temperatures as well, right? So we see both changing water distributions and changing temperatures. And I would actually take heart to some extent because although as a lot of these temperatures have risen, as a lot of these areas have seen less natural precipitation, although that's obviously a problem, a lot of clouds now that used to naturally precipitate because they were -10, -20 degrees, and ice would form naturally that way. Well, we're actually seeing more and higher concentrations of clouds that are between 0 degrees Celsius and -10 degrees Celsius. And in that range, they're entirely seedable. So there's still tons of water above us that we could bring to come down.
Nick, I was hoping that you could maybe take the conversation around how what Rainmaker does specifically supports outdoor recreations and winter outdoor recreation specifically. I think that the audience would find a lot of value in that. So maybe you guys spend a little bit of time talking about that together too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our biggest concern is generating snow and moisture during the typical winter months that we are accustomed to having winter. Kind of mid-November through mid-April, so to speak. I know you're working with a number of resorts around helping with snow and moisture, and a lot of our business relies on that snow. And without it, people aren't buying winter sport gear. People aren't going to resorts. The West right now is pretty high and dry. The East is getting a ton of snow. how do you see your work with not only the resorts but also the states that you align with in the winter sports states in generating more moisture to help contribute to that business model?
Totally. So as we see changes in where precipitation's falling, we might just think that there's not enough moisture at all. Like there's not enough moisture even in the clouds above us. And that's the fundamental problem. It's not just that there's not enough precipitating moisture. Well, the reality actually is there's still lots of moisture overhead that's just in slightly warmer clouds that aren't naturally precipitating as much. And so what Rainmaker can do is in these clouds that maybe used to be cold enough to snow before, that are still seedable, that you can actually make to snow. If you do have a cloud seeding program, you can get three cool outcomes. Like one is you can bring the season forward and extend it longer, because you can get snow on the ground earlier than you might see natural snowfall, and you can get it later, maybe into April. So that's one, like extending the season on both sides. Two, you can rely less on, or maybe not exclusively on, snowblowers too. So snowblowers, they're super useful, but they're on specific runs. They're pretty CapEx intensive. And cloud seeding, it doesn't just put snow on a specific run, but it distributes snow over the entire mountain or series of mountains in which you're operating. And so you can extend the season earlier and later. You can get a more uniform distribution of snow across your entire resort. And this is like the third gimmicky one, it is actually like natural powder insofar as it came from a cloud. And so you get a pretty different texture from the snow that you see in cloud seeding as well.
Yeah.
We see no gimmick there. That
absolutely.
sounds spot on.
I mean, I would imagine your team members are avid skiers and snowboarders, and they get it, and they're psyched to be contributing to what their winter looks like, and it feels good here at SIA and everywhere else when we're doing good work to help the industry. So, the fact that you are a reliable source for delivering moisture and snow is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Can we also talk a little bit about the Bear River project, because that obviously is how Utah has become famous for its snow. So we want to make sure we save time for you to get into kind of the project that you're actively managing now.
Totally. So the Great Salt Lake is really, really depleted already. And there's a deficit of water flowing into the lake year over year. That's partially because the state of Utah is growing and people are consuming a lot more of the snow melt that would have otherwise run into the lake. It's also just because we're seeing less natural precipitation. And so what we started just a month ago was the Bear River program. It was this joint program between the Utah Department of Natural Resources, the Idaho Water Development Board, and the Wyoming State Engineer Office. And we're running the biggest cloud seeding program in the United States as of the last 50 years to make it snow more in the Bear River, which is the primary tributary that flows into the Great Salt Lake. That's over the mountains of the Bear River Range, the Salt River Range, and then also the Uintas. And so there's some resorts around there. If you guys want to look into which ones might be getting a bit more snow this year because of that, I encourage you to. But that program I'm super, super excited about, not because it alone is going to be the thing that saves the Great Salt Lake. Like I mentioned before, I think that the conservation is going to be really important, but our goal this year is to put 30,000 acre feet of entirely man-made snow on the ground in that mountain range to flow into the lake. And that's like a meaningful, not solving the problem wholesale, but a meaningful single-digit percentage of the deficit that the lake's in right now. And in subsequent years, we want to scale that up to produce hundreds of thousands of acre feet for the Bear River Range and ultimately stop the aridification of the lake wholesale.
Yeah. And then just so our viewers know, the Bear River project is a massive multi-million-dollar proposal to divert up to 30% of the Bear River's water for growing population in northern Utah's Wasatch Front. So you can imagine the controversy there, but also the need to increase moisture to continue to support the watershed.
Yeah, and I mean, it's obviously in one sense the slopes and the resorts that are going to benefit from this, but the really, really grounding thing that I think about all the time is as the Great Salt Lake is depleted, as it evaporates, the lake bed is exposed. And there's two problems with that. One, this toxic arsenic particulate is getting lofted up into the air. And so that puts in jeopardy all the million people that live in the vicinity of the lake. And the lake, as it recedes, has less lake effect. So you have this runaway problem where you get less snow because there's less lake effect snow, which then results in even less lake effect later on. And so it's really important to take every opportunity that we have to put more snow in there so that we get more natural powder as well.
Absolutely. And that doesn't even account for the real estate prices if you got arsenic blowing through your town and a lack of moisture. So it has quite the domino effect.
It's interesting. You're in front of a really interesting group of stakeholders. As I said, like everyone's going to listen to this. There's literally nobody who's going to not tune in. And it's a mix of retailers, resorts, beautiful brands, athletes, you name it, just people with a lot of reach. And I would love for you to have the opportunity to kind of share your message with them around what we do specifically, because we actually have a really strong business voice when we unite with winter outdoor and also outdoor recreation. You know, the non-winter months, there's, a big faction of us out there from a business standpoint. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe give us what you would like us to hold on to, how we can help, anything that you want from us. Now's a great place for you to share that.
Well, thanks. Again, it's super, super generous of you guys to take the time. So thank you. The first thing I would say, as much for my own sake as yours or anybody else listening, the doom and gloom thing, the sense of helplessness that I think a lot of us have felt in the past, that is not a necessary disposition. I think that part of what Rainmaker's doing that's as important as putting the snow on the ground itself is just proving to people that we can come up with solutions to these seemingly intractable problems. I think that as long as we are pretty relentless in our drive and don't give up, there are new innovative things we can do to solve problems like the Great Salt Lake depleting or like a historic drought resulting in less snowfall. And so take heart, we got to do the work, but I'm not going to give up on this and throw out my hands at any point. And I know that there's probably going to be listeners to this and at least the hundreds of people at Rainmaker and the thousands of people cheering us on otherwise across our programs that are going to do the work to try to fix this. That's the first thing. The second thing is, cloud seeding obviously still talked about at every dinner table in America. I think a lot of people have questions about it. And we're always going to be really transparent and open about the questions that folks have, especially when it's, 25-year-old mullet man talking about modifying the weather. That's deserving of some questions. But if you have any questions and you want to go to our website, rainmaker.com, we have an FAQ. And if you want to look at that when people say we shouldn't be cloud seeding for some reason, you have an informed opinion to either counter that or provide some nuance to the discussion, because we want to see this technology be deployed and at the very least not be banned, right? That's the thing I would say. And then the third and last thing is we've done work with resorts in the past. We've done work with state governments, but we've also found that there's beneficiaries of increased snowpack that might not be direct beneficiaries from snowfall. So if you're a brand that benefits from increased snowpack, but you don't necessarily want to pay for a cloud seeding program yourself because you don't see that snow immediately translate to dollars in, but you contribute. There is this nonprofit called Refill America. They're working on a program for the restoration of Lake Powell. And there's a bunch of private entities that are contributing to that to help bring more snowpack through cloud seeding to these places that need it. And even if the amount of water, even if they're not selling resort themselves, and so they don't benefit one-to-one for the snow on the ground, they do indirectly benefit in a big way. So I can send you guys the link to that as well. Refill America is the name of that nonprofit, and I'm pretty stoked to be working with them.
We will put everything in the show notes, and we're definitely very happy that you're members. You've joined SIA. We're really proud of that, and you just would not believe the loyalty and the fight that we have as a community. So I know I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think there's a big swath of people out there who are willing to get into the trenches with you. I would love to also have kind of as we would look to wrap up here, I'd love to have Nick kind of talk a little bit about like current and long-term focus, because it is really, really important that we stress like this is year-round health for the outdoor recreation industry. This isn't just about winter.
Yeah, I mean, this is our livelihood relies on it, and we're as much snow farmers as you are, moisture producers, and so on and so forth. And we really have to look at reversing the desertification of the American West, and I think that is something that's real. We see it in the West with lack of water, with water bans, so on and so forth. But more importantly, providing water for the farms, the watersheds, the ecosystems, and the things that really drive the economy and in our livelihoods. And I just think that there's just so much that we can be doing and need to be doing. And so one, I'm super stoked that we're involved with you and you're involved with us. And then really, I think there's this notion around weather modification. Is that something that we can get our hands on and we can really move that forward to be more consistent with, at least for the winter months? And then, how can we ultimately make Earth, what it was and what it's supposed to be, which is lush and green and abundant, and it's all water dependent. So, I think those are the things that are really important for our business, and directly and indirectly, and then I just think what we've been living with in the last few years. I mean, my insurance, my homeowner's insurance has been dropped a couple of times because we're in a high risk of fire and no water, and that's catching on around the American West, and people are having to make big decisions. So water is central to everything we do, and this industry is relying on it, as are so that we don't work with directly, but we affect indirectly. Yeah,
like maybe 20% of Rainmaker are members of Trout Unlimited. They're a bunch of anglers, right? Need the snow melt for there to be a river to run through. So anyway, yeah, agreed. Summertime, the snowpack matters just as much.
It does.
Yep.
I love this one. As we were researching our interview for you today, you carry belief that weather modification will be one of the four most important 21st century technologies alongside AI, nuclear, and rocketry. I think that's kind of where I'm going. Like, we'd love to kind of end the show just with your big vision, because you are really leading. Like, this is an uphill battle. Let's just be honest. But we've kind of been the scrappy, small, vociferous crew who's like always fighting for, what we believe in and what we've chosen to join in terms of this industry and the community that we love and all of the things we support. And just hearing from somebody with a vision like yours, I think it really gives us all kind of a shot in the arm. So I wanted to just let you kind of talk about what success will look like for you long term. The work you're starting here today, and now we can say with us.
Nick, you words that I reiterate to my team all the time, right? Our mission at Rainmaker is to make water abundant and end water scarcity. I want, over the course of my life, for the planet to be as lush and green and hospitable and friendly to our ecosystems as possible. There's been this idea in the last 100 years, maybe, that as human interests expand, the environment has to retreat. And really, I don't think that that's the case. I think that we can have a more symbiotic and intentional relationship to the weather and our environment than ever before. And by stewardly and cautiously deploying cloud seeding to make more water for ourselves and our ecosystems, that is what I think will come to pass over the next decade. And so this decade is first and foremost about stopping the aridification that we see throughout the American West and these other at-risk places around the arid regions of the globe. But long-term, with a lot of stakeholder engagement, with a lot of conversations about how to do it right, I want to take places in the world that haven't been green in our lifetimes and even green them, right? We have to get back to baseline first. And then after that, I think that what I would hope to do is on med look over a plot of land, whether that's in Utah or California or New Mexico, that was a desert when I grew up, and handed off to my grandchildren as a green forested little oasis, and have the ability to do that because we brought more water down with these new technologies. And I don't just want myself to be able to do, but I want all of us and all of our grandkids to work to make that future possible, a more lush and green one than ever. So Rainmaker will get into the business of terraforming after we've made enough water to stop the problems that we have at hand now.
Absolutely. I like that. And I mean, if you can achieve that, you and us, we are winning on all levels. So I think that's really cool.
It's awesome. So again, we know you are beyond busy. Thank you so much for joining us. And also, I just want to reiterate, Refill America will have the link in the show notes and rainmaker.com. And just know you're going to have a lot of interest and support from us. And I'm going to say this now, but we do have great news around you being at our global summit. So we're kind of breaking the news here.
We're psyched to have you. Thank you so much. It's going to be awesome. And, and we're going to be able to ask you a lot more questions and really expose you to, the decision makers in this industry. And it'll be really cool to have the power of the winter outdoor recreation economy in that room. And it's going to be great to see, how they react and certainly the questions that they have, because, they're up to their eyeballs in this, no differently than we are. So
it's true. Really and this is going to elevate us from, we talk a lot on this show around just best practices in business and navigating headwinds in business. There's so much change everywhere. But I love that this topic and your vision is going to help us kind of pop up and come together as a community and look ahead. So we just really couldn't be more proud and happy to have you in our membership and in our community, Augustus. Thank you.
And final is we're also stoked for your mullet to be in our membership in our community. And we've got a straight on view of you, but I've seen your mullet from the side and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Let's do that.
Maybe we can get Nick.
I'll work on it.
Let's do that. And I'll make sure it's grown out enough by the summit so that when we're bombing down a hill together, it flows well.
That would be great. A specimen mullet is what I request.
All right, awesome. Can do. Thanks, guys.